everyone, and welcome to Season 4, Episode 12 of History's Greatest Idiots, the show where we go back through all of human history and bring you examples of monumental stupidity where people have made huge mistakes, and hopefully you can learn from their mistakes and never repeat them again. But who are we kidding? We're humans. We like making mistakes, and sometimes people get annoyed when we make those mistakes, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. Joining me as ever is my amazing co-host and wonderful friend, Derek. Derek, how are you doing, my man?
I'm awesome, man. I'm doing really good. Yeah.
Yep. We've had a bunch of technical difficulties before this stream. I just want to point out that there's something going on with my internet. I don't know what it is, but occasionally my picture will freeze and the audio will go bad. And we had this issue yesterday when we were trying to record a Patreon special. So we'll try and do that again, possibly using different software. So,
yeah. Well,
and I have to ask because I can't see it. To me, this all looks fine. How am I doing so far?
Your picture froze, but your sound sounded good. Unless you just held really still for a second.
I'm definitely not sitting still.
Okay.
God damn it! We'll have to work out what's going on here because it keeps dropping in and out, and this is unacceptable. Might even have to talk to my ISP, but who knows? Nothing else seems to be wrong, and it just seems to be stuff at my end. So no idea what's going on. Hopefully, it's nothing serious.
I'm sure it's just the weather or something.
They're displaying the weather and nothing scary at all. So. Yeah, we while we're on the subject of patrons, we'd like to give a big shout out to our wonderful patrons. That's the OG Jesse Christ, Andrew Zavara, Kimberly Johnson, and Dilly Bob. Thank you all for contributing to our wonderful, amazing patron. And if you would like to join them in slinging us some cash and getting a free gift and maybe access to behind the scenes stuff like scripts and our daily lives and Patreon exclusive recordings when we can actually get the technology working, go to patreon.com/history's greatest idiots. And you can also join us on Instagram, which is at history's greatest idiots. We've had a bunch of really interesting interactions on there recently, which we will discuss later.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of an interesting episode today, not just because of the technical issues which seem to be plaguing us, but also what we're going to do is I'm going to start, and then we're going to discuss a little thing that happened as a result of our last episode, which we'll get into. It's nothing serious, so I don't want anyone to worry, but it's worth a conversation, I think.
I think so. I want to talk about it.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah. So while we'll kick things off now, we would normally get into like how our lives are going, but I just want to get into the topic in case my internet just dies completely.
Could be a thing. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Just know that we're doing well. We're doing really well. I had a first week in a new job, and it's gone really well, and I'm super happy. And we'll get to the thing now. So, everyone knows about bad films, right? And we're not just talking about, oh god, Avengers Age of Ultron was not very good. We're talking like really bad, like Mystery Science Theater level bad films, poorly framed, boom mics dropping into set, poor focus, really bad dialogue, all of it, all the worst technical things about a film, right? Everyone's heard of those films. They're kind of fun to watch to a certain extent.
Like Zombie Beavers 3D.
Yeah, or Manos, The Hands of Fate, which was widely considered for a long time the worst film of all time on IMDb. And pretty much anything made by Ed Wood really was awful.
Oh, man. I saw one, Birdemic. That was...
Yes.
Yeah.
That's amazing. They've got coat hangers, and they're like flinging them at terrible like clip art level animated birds. Really, really bad film. But I want to talk today about someone who, and it's very difficult to know with this guy because I just want to point out there is a redemption arc with this guy, but I don't know whether this gentleman set out to deliberately make bad films, but he ended up making a lot of very terrible films. And I will tell you about that now. Oh, I can see that I'm frozen on the live stream. That's That's really encouraging. The live stream's like 30 seconds behind, so that's funny. So anyway, let me tell you about Uwe Boll, the worst director since Ed Wood, allegedly, although the scores kind of bear that out. I think it's fair to say that very few people have been as consistently bad on as big of a stage as Uwe Boll has in his entire career.
You're going to have to give me some of these movies. I don't know that I recognize the name yet.
There's some big stuff here. Like, I mean, you may not have seen them, but you will recognize the names attached to them in terms of the film names and the cast.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's some big stuff here. So, Uwe Boll was born in, technical issues aside, I have to say a lot of German things now.
Okay.
Wermelskirchen, and studied at the University of Cologne. Smells amazing. He holds a PhD in literature. I want to point this out now. Uwe Boll, really smart guy. Like kind of a bit of a polyglot, whatever they're called. He can do a lot of things very well. One of them is not filmmaking, unfortunately. So,
yeah, I don't know. Maybe is it a thing that super smart genius people aren't necessarily always the most creative?
Yes. Usually genius in children comes in the form of really great memory, and as people become, and also geniuses generally are really, really, really good at one thing. So the idea that you can be a genius at everything is like that doesn't really happen. But you can be very, very good at multiple things if you spend a lot of time practicing them. And Uwe Boll has a kind of the mind that can turn to multiple different things reasonably well. Unfortunately, directing and writing all those included in that. So Boll first directed to go into the movie business at 10 years old after seeing Marlon Brando's Mutiny on the Bounty, which is a really good film.
Okay. No, he just decided he didn't get into.
Yeah, he was just like, this is what I'm doing at 10 years old. So, and 10-year-olds, you can't really take that seriously, but this guy stuck to it for a large portion of his life. So he was driven, he's determined, and we like that in people, So Boll's first film is 1991's German Fried Movie. It is a German version of the Kentucky Fried Movie. I don't know if you're aware of that, which is like a spoof thing.
The name sounds familiar, but I mean, is there a special way of German frying things?
I don't think there is, unless it involves strudel or schnitzel or various sausages. I don't think. I think it's just a really poor title, and that plays out because it's got a 1.5 out of 10 on IMDb. His first film.
So it's going to be like my first film.
Yeah, I feel like that it's unfair to judge people based on their first film, because like not everyone can be like Christopher Nolan, and do what was that thing with Guy, the guy who can't remember stuff. Memento. Yeah.
I wasn't a fan of that movie.
Yeah, but technically, like, it's a really good film. I didn't particularly enjoy it either. I enjoyed the noir elements, but yeah, some people's first films are genuinely great. Most people's aren't, though. So it's not fair to judge Uwe Boll based on like his first film. I scoured the internet for a review of German Fried Movie, and the only critic review I could find was in German. And I actually studied German a little bit, but Google knows German much better than I do. So we combined, translated it. And part of the review states, the tense hustle and bustle seems particularly bad when you try to include political topics in a comedy, which then becomes evident in jokes such as the fact that the central character, to whom we owe the insight into what is going on around us, prefers to watch TV instead of setting fire to asylum seekers' homes.
Huh?
Yeah, this is a comedy.
That doesn't sound funny.
I don't know how you can make a comedy where people are going around setting fire to asylum seekers' homes. That sounds like German History X. You know, like that does not sound fun.
I mean, what was the background music like?
I'm sure it was great.
I mean,
I
if it was
can't find
Benny Hill.
If it was Benny Hill, then that changes everything. If it's John Williams giving it dramatic gusto, then I'm sure it was great. But doesn't sound like it was. So after this, Boll does a bunch of German films, none of which really do much because they're independent German films, and even people in Germany don't watch them outside of maybe a few people in Berlin. But Boll's first two major releases were the horror movie Blackwoods and the drama Heart of America, both of which he directed and co-wrote. Okay. So let me tell you about the initial plot of Blackwoods. Matt Sullivan, played by Patrick Muldoon, is haunted to the point of mental instability by his guilt over the death of a girl named Molly in a car accident he caused years ago. Driving drunk after an argument with his girlfriend, he was distracted by the car radio and fatally struck the girl as she crossed the road. This one isn't a comedy, just so we're aware. This isn't him trying to be funny. Years later, Matt goes away for a weekend with his new girlfriend, Keegan Connor Tracy, to the Blackwoods of Colorado. Sounds like the Walton Files. Yes, Toasty, it does a little bit, actually. And I'm wondering if
wasn't there a Harrison Ford movie where he had like a student that he drowned in the lake? Same thing.
There was. That was What Lies Beneath.
Yeah.
And that's actually a decent film. I enjoyed that. A lot of people didn't like it and felt it was a bit too hammy, but that's a tense film. Go and watch that if you get a chance. Also, like, it's a very 90s trope where you have an intro to a film that shows a character having a really sad start and then having to rebuild from there. Like, that's a big 90s trope in filmmaking, you know.
That's that save the cat writing, man. You gotta you gotta love that character.
Yes.
So that you care about the story.
Exactly, yes. So they've made you love this character by having him run over a child. So him and his new girlfriend Dawn go to the Blackwoods of Colorado during our hero, ladies and gentlemen. And during a stopover in a small town, Matt and Dawn have lunch at a local diner where he notices several of the locals staring oddly at the two of them because it's Colorado and ding 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 ding. Yeah, Colorado's not that bad.
Yeah,
no, this is just stereotyping.
Sure.
It's terrible. On the road, Matt is pulled over by Sheriff Harding, who's played by Michael Paré. I think he's somewhat famous, but I doesn't ring a bell. No. The sheriff asks Matt who he is and what he's doing passing through town. What are you doing in my town? After Matt explains
back at the time.
Yeah, it feels like it should be. It's like very Rambo at this point. After Matt explains about his private getaway, Sheriff Harding lets him go. Matt checks into a local motel where he interacts with the debauched motel clerk and owner Greg, played by Clint Howard, who tries to overcharge him for his room for the night. Later, after a wild session of lovemaking, Dawn goes for a walk, because of course you do after having sex. While she is away, a strange man with an axe comes into the motel room and attacks Matt, who escapes and calls the police. Sheriff Harding shows up, and after finding no one around, openly suspects Matt of having ulterior motives for visiting the Blackwoods, but without any hard evidence, he cannot arrest him. Matt phones his friend Jim, telling him of Dawn's disappearance and asking for his help before setting out to look for her. That's like several different films.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Yeah.
This is the plot?
This is the plot. And this is the sequence of the plot. And already you're like, there's a lot of and then going on in this plot instead of what's the alternate for that? As a result of or because of that, this happens. So, like, you're not getting a sequence of events. You're just getting a bunch of stuff strung together. This is probably going to work at some point. It sounds like a combination of, like, Rambo and, like, a porn version of Psycho and The Hills Have Eyes and stuff.
Yeah.
You know? So...
Yeah, you're putting them all together.
And it doesn't work. It's really, really bad. Anyway, the film's released and it's a disaster, because as bad as it sounds, it's harder to watch.
At least it had Clint Howard in it.
At least Clint Howard was in it. He's going to work with a lot of famous people. I just want to point that out right now. He's going to work with some big ass names.
Okay.
So Stephen Holden from the New York Times actually gave Blackwood's a positive review, describing it as smarter and more diabolical than you could have guessed at the beginning, which is a good way of saying the film was shit to begin with, but it gets better.
I guess that's a way to go.
Yeah. Users are generally less kinder. One describing the film as feels like a film student, even for someone as inept as Uwe Boll. It is an attempt at psychological horror, even though it just ends up being utterly confusing and headache-inducing. There are nauseating slow-motion scenes that are unwatchable. I myself had to look away because it was hurting my eyes. There is a really bad sound mix between dialogue and music, and if there's one thing I hate about watching movies at home, it's when I have to be a volume jockey. I hate that too.
Oh, yeah, that's the worst.
Yeah, when you're like, oh, come on, like, why do I want to hear what they're saying, but I don't have my fucking ears blown off by an explosion, you know? It's a difficult thing to balance. And
turn on the closed captions.
Exactly, and that's what I'm doing because I'm getting old. Is this the guy who made the Postal movie? Yes, Toasterzoid. It's that guy. So back to the review. It's a very dense film with some good ideas to it, because stolen from other films, but never has the know-how to flush out said concepts. 0.5 star out of 5. Another review stated, Uwe Boll likes to defend himself against a horde of harsh critics by stating that they never mention his early films, probably because no one's actually seen them. And he includes this in his list of pre-video game based films, but I can tell you right now that this is way worse than any of the number of video game adaptations he's made. Hey, at least he's showing improvement. This is really and truly an awful film that belongs way down, playing over and over again at the drive-in theater in the 7th circle of hell.
Wow.
Yeah.
Glowing reviews.
It's up there with It's So Bad It Gave Me Cancer, which is from the not Borat, the other one he did film. Yeah. So the film has 11% on rating on Rotten Tomatoes, but until Rampage in 2009, this film was known as Uwe Boll's best film. To give you some idea.
Oh.
Yeah. He made worse films than
bad.
this. It's really, really bad. So his second movie, which I mentioned earlier, Heart of America, is a 2002 Canadian-German drama film about this subject matter, about the events leading up to and revolving around a shooting on the final day of school. So Uwe Boll is going for big issues.
Yeah, that's some real like 13 Reasons Why shit. Here we go.
Yeah, and also if you've ever seen the Gus Van Sant film Elephant, it's so good. I mean, Gus Van Sant's made some really good films. Obviously, Good Will Hunting is probably the most famous one because he won an Oscar for that, and Kevin Smith basically financed it. But Elephant, I watched it in America while I was on holiday there, and it kind of blew my mind. It was chilling and upsetting, but brilliant at the same time. I would recommend Elephant, but only if you've never had anyone involved in a school shooting before, because it's eerily accurate, and that film is 20 years old now, and it's still relevant to this day. So the film features... So this is... what was the name of the film? It's so shit. Heart of America. The film features an ensemble cast. Jürgen Prochnow, Michael Paré, Elizabeth Moss.
Okay, that one sounds familiar.
Yeah, from Handmaid's Tale and West Wing and Invisible Man. Really fucking good actress. Patrick Muldoon, also quite a recognizable name from I think the 70s and 60s. Clint Howard again. So he likes to work with Clint Howard again and Michael Paré. And Brendan Fletcher, who, I don't know, The film also addresses the issues of school bullying, because why not? In for a penny, in for a pound. So she's also a Scientologist. Yeah, I forgot to mention that about Elizabeth Moss. She gets a lot of credit, and rightly so, for her amazing acting. But yeah, there's Scientology in there, so who knows? Maybe she likes Xenu. So let me give you one review for Heart of America. Uwe Boll is like a blind bus driver in the woods. It's inevitable that he'll crash into trees several times, but he's going to pray that he can steer through it, not caring that he decapitated the passengers long ago.
Ouch.
That's a review.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
The film was a complete disaster.
I'm not so mad about our comments now.
No, I'm really not mad at all, having seen a bunch of Uwe Boll's stuff. And these people followed his career and tracked him and hounded him. Rightly so, because the films are awful, for years.
Okay.
And we'll get to what happened in a bit. Next, Boll made the first of several video game movie adaptations. This is what he's really famous for. And I want to point out that Boll not only gets public money to make these films from the Canadian and German government. I don't know how he does it. I think it's some sort of art funding.
Okay.
But he's also at least partially responsible for this cliched idea that there is no such thing as a good video game movie, because there's so many bad ones out there that, oh no, none of them can be good. And actually, you look at the history of bad video game movies, they far outweigh the good ones. Like, there's maybe 4 or 5 good ones, and the bad ones, something like 40 or 50% are made by Uwe Boll.
Well, so it's his fault
mostly, and the Super Mario Brothers movie, and the fucking Assassin's Creed movie, and Doom, and
seen it.
The Rock's in it, and it's so fucking bad. So I'm going to quickly run through the video game movies now, or as many of them as I can, because we'll be here for hours otherwise. I'm going to give you an overview of the film, the responses to them from critics, and how much money they made or lost.
Okay.
There was no profit anywhere near this. 2003's House of the Dead is based on the House of the Dead video game franchise. It stars Jonathan Cherry, Tyrone Lateso, Clint Howard again, Ona Grauer, Ellie Cornell, and Jürgen Prochnow again. The film takes place on a fictional island infested with zombies, forcing survivors to fight their way off. It's basic zombie film premise, really, but based on video games. Not a direct adaptation of the individual entries. Boll described the film as a prequel to the original 1996 game. The film cost $12 million to make, and it grossed $13.8 million.
Okay.
So it's worth pointing out this, and I'm sure a lot of people know this if you're into films and stuff, but the usual rule of thumb, and it doesn't apply anymore because we're in the streaming age now, but if you take the budget for a film, you usually have to double that because you've got distribution costs and marketing and advertising and stuff. So usually when a film has a budget of 12 million, it needs to make at least $24 million before it can break even. And then anything after that is profit, basically. Mm-hmm. But this film made $13.8 million. Possibly to his credit, there may not have been a huge amount of marketing for this one. So, maybe the marketing budget was minuscule, but even then, like 13.8 million, you're not getting any profit out of that, really.
Maybe he broke even.
Maybe he broke even. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he broke even. But I just want to point out that $13.8 million is the most he's ever made on a film.
Okay. More than me, still.
More than us. But it's about to get a lot worse. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film was ranked as the 41st of the 100 worst reviewed films of the 2000s, with an approval rating of 3% based on 61 reviews.
Oh,
that's quite the aggregate. The site's consensus reads, a grungy, disjointed, mostly brainless mess of a film, House of the Dead is nonetheless loaded with unintentional laughs. So
that's the best kind.
Have I mentioned the boxing matches? I'm going to get to the boxing matches. Uwe Boll is an interesting guy. So we've had this film, 13.8 million. Let's go for the benefit of the doubt. He's broken even. Let's be generous and say that he's broken even with that one, because there might be home box office. Also, this is the age of DVDs. So maybe there's someone out there stupid enough to buy this for their schlocky collection.
Well, like, if you can't break even on a zombie movie in the 90s, you suck at life.
It's pretty much. Like, zombie films are super low budget. You just need a few squibs and some makeup, and you can film that shit anywhere. Like, Edgar Wright made so much money on Shaun of the Dead, and that had a minuscule budget. One of my friends is actually in that film.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, he's a zombie, and you see him in one frame, and I'm like, oh my God, that's Craig. Hey, Craig. But yeah. Yeah, it's if you can't make money off zombie films in the early 2000s, then you kind of fucked, really, aren't you? Because that's like, this is around about the time of 28 Days Later, which was a huge hit. And, you know, not Dawn of the Dead, The Walking Dead is right around the corner. Also, just random thing, I just mentioned 28 Days Later, and it got me thinking. My step-grandmother and her sister went on holiday to the northeast of England recently, and they said, oh, we went on holiday and we saw a bunch of actors and people filming some film, and apparently it's a Danny Boyle film. I didn't know that he was going to be there. And so my mother messaged me and she was like, is Danny Boyle making a film at the moment with numbers in the title? I was like, holy shit, they just saw 28 Years Later being made.
Nice. Yes.
And they were like, oh, and there was this Irish actor and everyone was following him everywhere. I was like, that's Cillian fucking Murphy. So there was like a bunch of people there, and they were like, oh, we thought we recognized someone, but we weren't 100% sure. And I looked through the cast list and I was like, that was probably Ray Fiennes. Like,
that's too cool.
That's so cool. And like, I could have been there, and they were like, oh, we were just there for Lindisfarne. We just wanted to see the Priory. It was really nice, actually, but there were people everywhere. It was really funny. So they stump. If you see 28 Years Later and they're these two like lost-looking, slightly elderly ladies walking around the background, that's like my relatives in the film. So funny. Anyway, so he's made this film. It's been a flop. I'll say broken even. Then he makes 2005's Alone in the Dark, which is based on the video game series of the same name. And despite the fact that he's not really made any money yet, he's kind of getting a little bit of recognition around his name. And Alone in the Dark, he manages to cobble together a cast that includes Christian Slater, Tara Reid, and Stephen Dorff. So
okay.
Early 2000s forwards. You may well have done, actually, because this is like, these are all available on streaming services. Please don't pay for them. But this is one of those films that was just sort of like, if you were watching at like 1 o'clock in the morning on like some random channel at that time, this might have been on, you know, like it's one of those films that was like, we didn't make any money. Let's just shove it on TV and see if people watch it. Anyway, it's a paranormal. They're all paranormal investigators who combat a supernatural threat. Big names attached to this one, obviously. Upon release, the film was absolutely fucking ripped apart by critics for the story, dialogue, special effects, and Tara Reid's seemingly drunken performance. Holding a 1% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, Alone in the Dark is considered one of the worst films ever made.
Come on.
It can't be that bad. Tara can't be that drunk. Have you? Yeah, exactly. I think she's in that.
Yes.
As well. Like, God bless her. She's paying that mortgage. Holy
Allegedly.
Shit. Allegedly. No, Tara Reid's had her shit, but you know, like I this is gonna sound so weird. I watched Josie and the Pussycats film with like Rachel Lee Cook because I had a fucking massive crush on that girl. And there's a bunch of it, like Alan Cummings in it, and Parker Posey, and a bunch of like other like cool actors. It's actually a really funny film. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. Tara Reid's in that. She's really quite good. She's a decent actress. She just decided to go for the easy paychecks, and God bless her. I would too. You know, someone's throwing millions of dollars at me to make a shit film. I'm going to do it. You know.
Yes.
So, exactly. Anyway, this film was a box office bomb. It grossed $12.7 million, which you think, oh, that's not bad. Budget was $20 million.
Oop.
Yeah. You got to pay for Christian Slater and Tara Reid and, you know, what was the other one? Stephen Dorff. And they're like a couple of million each, at least.
Stephen Dorff's still pulling that kind of money?
I would imagine. Well, this is kind of around about Blade.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's only a few years after Blade.
Back then.
Yeah, this is maybe like 7, 8 years after Blade. So he's still
Okay.
making decent money. This isn't like, oh my God, the last time anyone saw him was in a shit Limp Bizkit video. You know, like this isn't that time, but you know, he's still making enough money. Again, he's making mortgage payment money. Although the home media release was much more successful, but not that successful. Like the DVD sold mostly in the bargain bins that you get, like, oh, this is only $1. Sure, why not? You know, what's
Right.
$1 gonna do? You know, I'll get 2 hours of enjoyment out of it. Unbelievably, despite the fact the film lost a shitload of money, a sequel with a different cast and story was released at home media in 2008. Boll didn't write and direct it. He served as a producer, though. So, also released in 2005 was Blood Rain, which acts as a loose prequel to the very first video game in that series. Blood Rain had its worldwide premiere at the Austin Film Festival on October the 23rd, 2005, 6 months after he released, where was it again? Alone in the Dark. So he's released 2 films in a year. I know Steven Spielberg did it with, you know, Schindler's List and Jurassic Park, but you know, I don't think you can compare those 2 films to this one.
Yeah, it's not the
Slight
same,
difference in
right?
quality. So this was released on January the 6th, 2006, and in Germany on September the 14th, 2006. The film, again, was panned by critics and audiences and was a massive box office bomb. His returns keep getting worse. This one grossed $3.7 million from a $25 million budget.
How is he still getting such big budgets?
Art money. He's getting that government funding to make these films. But like, and again, we're in the old school of filmmaking here. So 25 million, this is a big game franchise. They'll have spent money on advertising. So 50 million at least. And he's made $3.7 million on it. I remember thinking Schindler's List was made in the 50s because it was black and white. I think that's kind of the thing that they were going for, like a timeless quality that you understand that this is a modern film, but the ramifications pass throughout all of history. And that was one of the important parts of it. Joe Layden of Variety said of Blood Rain, the film lurches from incident to incident at a graceless, plodding pace, offering little in the way of genuine excitement. The sword fights often are confusingly cut and choreographed, and only minimal amounts of guilty pleasure titillation can be found. So you can't even enjoy it on like this is so bad it's good level things, which if you watch Red Letter Media, they have a bunch of really stupid, terrible films that they really enjoy because they're really bad, but you laugh at them because they're really bad. Whereas there's just nothing.
It's just this is a walkout. This
is a husk. Yeah, this is a film that you will not come back to at all. It currently has a score of 4% on Rotten Tomatoes, so he's increased it by 3% from the previous one. So that's 5% on 2 films in a year. That's some batting average. Holy shit.
Oh man,
5% out of 200, and somehow spawned a sequel that was also a complete disaster. I know he made a sequel to this. It lost like $38 million or something.
How does that work? Like okay, the first one lost you so much money. What I'm gonna do? Double or nothing.
Double.
That doesn't work when you lost already, dude.
I know. Yeah, it can't get any worse than 4%, can it? Also,
okay.
You know, when you like, because I follow a lot of art stuff online, and I like particularly charcoal. I've been watching a really cool charcoal account recently, and Derek, you'll know because you do all this wonderful art and stuff. Sometimes you see art, and a lot of people in the comments. When they see these things, there's one guy who grabbed a huge branch and he coated the branch in paint and he just ran towards canvas and just smashed it into the canvas, and you had the basic outline of a branch, and then he sold it for $6,000. Yeah, I was like, the wrong industry. Yeah. And the comments all say the same thing every time. It'll either be no talent or it'll be money laundering. And the theory is that a lot of art in the art world is a money laundering exercise by super rich people who don't want to pay taxes, but want to have something to show for it. I paid $6,000 for this, therefore in 2 years it'll be worth $20,000. You know, that sort of thing.
Wealthy people that want to launder your money.
Yeah.
I know a guy that does art.
Oh yeah, yeah, you do. And he has a bunch of canvases available for $10,000.
Just kidding. Laundering money is illegal. Don't do that.
Don't do that. But buy art, by all means.
Yes,
Just don't do it as a service of money laundering. But it reminds me of the Tate Modern. Sorry, there's an award in this country where we have modern artists, and they get awarded it every year, and it was like a high profile, big deal thing, and everyone that won it was like weird, and their art wasn't really art. And then one year, one guy just decided to expose the whole thing, and his entry was a room that you walk into, a giant room with a light on the ceiling, big light that just turns on and off. And they were like, all the art critics were coming up to him and going, so what is this? Is this like a comment on like society and like the disposableness of energy and the finite resources? And he's like, no, it's just a light that turns itself on and off every 30 seconds. And the next piece was a piece of blue tack, that he just shoved on the wall. And they were like, what is this disposable consumer culture? He's like, no, it's just a piece of blue tack on the wall. And he sold it for like thousands of dollars.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And he was taking the piss, and he won the Turner Prize. And from that moment on, no one took it seriously, because they were like, well, he's deliberately taking the piss out of it. So what do we...
Artists, man.
Oh, it's dead. So anyway, that's the theory, is that Uwe Boll's... what's this from Haley Payne? Reminds me of the banana taped to the wall. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's that level of artistry. It's not really a thing. And Toasterzoid here reminds me of that one art piece of a banana. Oh, it's the same thing. It's the same comment. Yeah, it's not art. So essentially, what you're looking at potentially with Uwe Boll is he goes to people and like, listen, do you want to donate $10 million to this film production? And you can have your own production company. And yeah, it's not art, but it is funny. That's true. It is hilarious. And maybe that's the art in itself. Maybe that's what you're paying 10 grand for. No, you're not. Don't be stupid. So the suggestion is that basically some of his films are money laundering exercises for very rich people who don't want to pay taxes, but want to say, I was a film producer, so...
How do you get out of paying taxes by being a film producer?
Well, Bill Gates, after he was investigated for antitrust issues around Microsoft, decided that he was never going to pay taxes ever again. So he just donated billions of dollars a year into the Bill Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Film grants.
Yeah, and that's specifically so that he loses money every year, so he never has to pay taxes. But he loses money because he's donating money to people that he likes.
I can make bad movies. Somebody give me money.
We can both make bad movies. Let's give ourselves a wage and have no guilt over the fact that money could have like cured an illness or something.
Dude, I totally want to help rich people not pay taxes. Give me money.
Me too. Let's facilitate that. There's a business there. So anyway, we move on to 2007. Now he takes a little bit of a break from the terrible films that he's making, but returns with probably the biggest and most famous cast to this date. In the Name of the King, a dungeon siege tale. With a name like that, it's bound to make money, right? Which starred Jason Statham. So, yeah, big name. Claire Forlani, who from the late 90s, early 2000s, she was in a bunch of stuff, quite famous. Lily Sobieski, who... Yeah. And she was in Eyes Wide Shut and a couple of other things as well. John Rhys Davis, who is in the Indiana Jones film and is Gimli in Lord of the Rings. Ron fucking Perlman, Hellboy. Yeah. And Ray fucking Liotta.
Okay. How did all this happen?
I know. This is a medieval film, by the way, with Ray Liotta in it.
I can see it though.
Maybe it works.
Was it set in Jersey?
Maybe, yeah. Ever since I remember, I always wanted to be a knight. Dun, 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 dun. Upon its release, the film was a major critical and commercial failure. No surprise there at this point. It was panned by critics and grossed 13.1 million. Is that slightly? No, that's less than the one where he made a bit more. But The budget was $60 million. So again, you double that, you got 120 million. That's a lot of money. Also, again, like, no, I'm not surprised. $60 million film. You know, these are big name actors: Jason Statham, John Rhys Davis, Ron Perlman, Ray Liotta, Claire Forlani. These people are getting at least 2-3 million each. Again, so, and why wouldn't you? They do the art house project so that they can get nominated for an Oscar or get a bit of recognition, and then they do the mortgage payment film. This is the mortgage payment film. That's why they're getting paid $5 million to be in a hunk of shit. It also has 4% on Rotten Tomatoes, and one critic describing it as featuring mostly wooden performances, laughable dialogue, and shoddy production values. In the Name of the King fulfills all the expectations of an Uwe Boll film. So people are expecting shit at this point, and some of them are paying to see it, but not many of them. His other films around this time include, as mentioned earlier by Toasterzoid, Postal, based on the Going Postal video games, featuring Academy Award-winning legend J.K. Simmons.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, he is in this film.
Postal.
Yeah, it's terrible. It grossed less than 1% of its budget.
Oh,
which is crazy. I couldn't find a budget figure for it, but it grossed less than 1% of whatever
that's pretty rough.
Really bad. And has 9%.
Or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that what he's in now? State Farm commercials?
Pretty much, yeah. He's kind of set for life now. So, but yeah, I just can't believe that a film can make that little amount of money. It has 9% on Rotten Tomatoes, so nearly double figures with that one. Oh. That's better. He also made a film, Seed, which cost $10 million. And this is where the films really go bad. It grossed $155,000.
Oh,
on a $10 million budget.
Oh,
that's like one cinema screen full of people. Like, that's how much that is. That's not a lot. You know, you get 1,500 people in a big cinema screen paying $10 each. Obviously, that's $15,000. You do that 10 times. There's the money it made.
That was
a
like just opening weekend?
That was the whole run of the film.
Oh.
And it was released in like hundreds of cinemas as well. This isn't like a limited release thing. This is like at least 300 to 500 cinema across the country.
And that was it. His career was over. He never made another film.
No, he made shitloads more. So many more. Farmers Insurance, actually. Oh, yeah.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah. And from Toastoid here, to be fair, Postal is supposed to be satirical and stupid, and Uwe is the only person who could have pulled it off. I think there's probably other people that could have done like a bad satirical film. I think the problem is that Uwe Boll is kind of inept at a lot of things. Maybe if he was in the room with other talented people, it could have worked. But I feel like Kevin Smith did a better version of that with like, what was that terrible film he made with like a bunch of hicks and stuff? I can't remember. Tusk, yeah, that's pretty bad and satirical, but yeah, that was it. Red State, the film. So yeah, I feel like a better version of this film exists somewhere, but yeah, it's out there now. It's legendary, Postal, as a terrible film. He also made Tunnel Rats, which is a war film that cost $8 million and grossed $35,000 at the box office.
Oh,
bad.
That's bad. He didn't even pay his production assistants pay for that.
No, that's like how much I make in a year. I'm one lowly person. Bill Gibran of filmcritic.com gave the film 3.5 stars out of 5, calling it very good. And that's amazing considering who's receiving said accolade.
Well, then people should go watch this movie and give it money.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit late, but sure. I mean, the reviews for this one are relatively positive, and it's an interesting take. It's not great. Let's be honest. It's not, Platoon or Saving Private Ryan or any of the major, like Dunkirk, any of the great war films. But it's a decent war film, apparently. And I guess, even a stop clock is right twice a day. So, he shat out a good film. Far Cry he also made, which is also based on a video game series, much more famous video game series, Far Cry. It cost $30 million to make. And again, this one had a big advertising budget. They really pushed this one. It grossed $743,000 at the box office.
Oof, that's not good for as like I remember the advertising on that one.
Yeah,
it was all over the place,
and
nobody went to see it.
No one saw it. Nobody saw it. IGN, a notoriously generous review site when it comes to scoring media, gave the film 3 out of 10. And these guys will give, like, I could literally go for a fart and they'd be like, oh, yeah, that's an ace. That's a solid 8 out of 10, that. But I just farted, yeah, but that's an ace. Yeah. It's not good. All told, his films have cost somewhere around, and it depends on the person you ask and the figures you look at, because there are figures available for this, $400 million if you include marketing and distribution costs and the budgets of the films. And they have earned back somewhere around $40 million.
So that's
a loss of $359 million during his filmmaking career, which in fairness is still less than the combined losses of the Marvels and the Flash last year, which were fucking demolished at the box office. So yeah.
See, all I'm saying is that I can lose money at movies too. Give me a job.
Give us an art grant. Come on. We can at least make something interesting, I think. Also, I feel like I'm being harsh on Uwe Boll, and rightly so. His films are shit. But it's worth noting that not all of them are awful. Just like most of them. So like 80% of his films are bad, like really bad. But there's like 3 or 4 decent ones in there that are like watchable or interesting in some way.
I can't conclusively say that I've seen any of the ones that you've mentioned so far.
That's it. Very few people have, and the ones that have seen them, a lot of it is hate watching. Sometimes they're like, oh my god, he's bringing another, okay, let's watch this one then. And then they're like, they have their expectations met, and they're like, yeah, it was as bad as I thought it was going to be, 4%. So that's how Uwe Boll basically stayed relevant. He was getting all this funding to make all these terrible films from governments across the world and stupid people who wanted to like lose money so they didn't pay taxes, and he kept on making money, and then he just had an army of people who just followed him and hated everything he made. So let's talk about the context of his work and the response to critics that were following him everywhere. In the Alone in the Dark DVD commentary, he responds to criticism that his adaptations make significant changes to the plot and style of the source material. Fans are always totally flipping out, and I understand that a fan of a video game has his own agenda in his head and has his own ideas about what is a good movie and what is a bad movie. Apparently women don't factor into this at all, but I mean, he's right. Video games are always going to be different from the film, but they don't have to be shit. As seen by the Mario Brothers film, that was perfectly acceptable, and a couple of other ones have been decent films. I have no issues with them, but yeah, a lot of them are bad, and a lot of that is down to Uwe Boll. Referring to the House of the Dead, Boll said, I think I made a perfect House of the Dead movie because it shows how the game is. It's a lot of fun. It's over-the-top action, only it isn't. It's shit. Boll is especially critical of his internet detractors, referring to 2 Ain't It Cool News critics. Remember that site? Ain't It Cool News? Oh, I remember that site. That was such a cool site back in the day. One guy was reviewing every film, and it was really, really interesting. And then he handed it over to other people because it became like the #1 internet review site for films, basically.
Oh, damn.
AintItCoolNews.com was a cool place to hang out back in the day. These 2 critics in particular constantly negatively reviewed his work. Harry Knowles and Quint, who is Eric Vespi, R, and then he uses a slur beginning with R. Yeah, which I can't say.
Rascally.
That rascally German man who uses really quite offensive words to describe people who don't like his work. Boll later claimed that Knowles was being played by film studios that kissed his ass with set visits and pretend to offer produce large budget films and suggested to Knowles the reason he did not like him was because I never kissed your ass, Harry. Either that or because you're churning out shit, mate, and he just doesn't like it. That's it. Yeah. Boll also criticizes the game companies themselves who he's worked with for not providing support to the production following the selling of the film rights. He cites the cross-promotion and support that comic book-based properties adapted for the screen received, whereas video game companies often sell off the license and then forget about it. He argues that this is the reason video game adaptations are not well received by critics and audiences. Yeah, that's the reason, Uwe.
I don't know. Also, Last of Us is pretty good.
Last of Us is really good. And,
I mean, it's not a movie, but...
yeah, and also Fallout
yeah,
recently.
that is really good.
Really good adaptation. So...
I like Twisted Metal too, but don't tell
Twisted Metal, that's a fun film. That's silly. Also, randomly, the main villain in Twisted Metal, that's Samoa Joe from wrestling. It's really cool to see him in a film. So, yeah, I think the problem is that Uwe is blaming everyone but himself for the shit here. And also, the idea that comic book-based properties get better support from comic books than video game adaptations do from video games. I don't think you realize that significantly more people play video games now than read comic books. So even if comic book adaptations are getting publicity in comic books, it's not going to make a massive difference. They just have a well-established audience of people that like their work. Whereas if a video game company, like if GTA, Grand Theft Auto, became a film, which would be kind of cool, but how do you make that? If Rockstar got involved with that, that would make a shitload of money. And I don't think you can really blame the video game companies for that, to be honest. The Last of Us is good because they understood what to change to fit the new medium, which can be difficult. Exactly right. And actually the same thing has been leveled at comic book films. You know, for years, The Watchmen was considered unadaptable, like impossible to adapt. Same thing with Dune. You know, these like dense works of fiction and narrative structures are considered impossible to adapt, and they've done them both reasonably successfully. I mean, the Watchmen film has its problems, but it's probably the best adaptation of a what's his name? God, he's like my favorite author of his works ever. Alan Moore.
Okay,
Alan Moore. Yeah, there we go. And also Dune. You know, the original Dune was cut short, and obviously we were going to get Jodorowsky's Dune, and that would have been amazing. But the Dune films by Denis Villeneuve are good. Those are decent films. They might not be quite the magnitude of influence that the books made, but they're well-made films. And I don't know if like having a book publisher supporting them would have made a huge difference to their success, because they've done well. So at a time when it's difficult to make money from films, you know. So anyway,
it's not the video game companies. It's you, dude.
It's you, dude. You're kind of shit. He said, when Wired published a negative review about Postal, Boll responded with an email to Wired. Surely that's not a good line to go down, claiming that the critic didn't understand anything about movies and that you are an untalented wannabe filmmaker with no balls and no understanding what Postal is. You don't see courage because you are nothing. And now go to your mom and fuck her, because she cooks for you now since 30 years, so she deserves it. I mean, his trash talk is worse than his films.
Yeah, he should go play some video games and step up his trash talk game. Shit,
he really should. That's some like Modern Warfare lobby level fucking trash talk right there. Also, have you ever noticed that when people say nasty things about like their critics and stuff, they kind of sound like they're talking about themselves for a moment?
A little bit, always, usually, maybe.
Yeah, untalented wannabe filmmaker. Like it's like. It's a bit close to home, actually. I'm not sure you want to be going down that route. Boll stated that this angry email was sparked not by the review, but because the Wired editor told Boll in person that they loved the movie and then published a negative review. Yes, that happens because they might be intimidated by you. So they go away and then a bad review comes out. I mean, yes, you can be angry about that, but there's no point like saying that shit in an email. They're going to publish it no matter what. So there we go. While his works were often met with critical disdain, Boll emphasizes that these projects were apparently financially viable, especially in home video sales. He points out that his movies, while low budget compared to studio blockbusters, often recoup their costs and more, even if they didn't dazzle at the box office. He uses House of the Dead as an example, which had a production budget of $7 million and garnered $11 million at the box office and an additional $28 million from home videos. Also, he said that his film Blood Rain gave more visibility to the game. Visibility doesn't pay bills, you know.
But what about the exposure? We pay you an exposure and credits.
Like, that'll help the game sell more. No, it won't. People who play the game aren't going to watch this fucking film. Maybe some of them, but not enough to go, oh my God, that was so brilliant. I have to go and buy the next game. No.
Right after I got done watching the Blair Witch Project, I rushed out and bought the game.
Yes.
Wait, no, was that a thing?
Maybe. I definitely did after watching the sequel. Oh, such a good film. So also the box office money dries up quickly. So the home box office money, dries up very quickly, because once you're removed from the top shelf, as it would have been back then, or now the top ranking, new release this week, it's really difficult for people to make that money back. So his arguments don't really hold up to, objective truth. In 2023, in a response to criticism, Boll has emphasized that the importance of understanding video game source material for film adaptations and reflected on the need for better script development and collaboration with game developers. I agree with that, actually. And we've had that recently, and that's why we've had The Last of Us and Fallout and the Mario Brothers film. And I think there's another one out there as well where I was like, that was decent. So
I'm so bad at watching video game films. Like I don't know the Mario Brothers movie. I haven't seen it.
It's okay. It's cute. Jack Black singing as Bowser. It's super, super cute. Who couldn't like that? Really, it's literally, and he says peaches, and it gets, because he's like, they've put a voice modulation on him to make him sound more like a monster. It sounds like he's saying bitches over and over again. Bitches, 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 like that. It's just, it's so perfect. Nice. So now let's get to the really crazy shit, which Toastazoid hinted at earlier on, actually. Boll made headlines by challenging his critics to put up or shut up. In June 2006, his production company issued a press release stating that Boll would challenge his 5 harshest critics to a 10-round boxing match. Invitations were also sent to film directors Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avery. Don't think you want to get in the ring with Quentin Tarantino, especially if he's had some coke. I think he might kill you.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. Definitely Harvey Keitel would.
Harvey Keitel, yeah. There are a bunch of people I wouldn't get in the ring with, but if you had, if Quentin Tarantino was like, I'm not going to fight you, but I'll sub in Robert De Niro, even a 70-year-old Robert De Niro would probably still be tough enough from Raging Bull to beat the shit out of this guy. Yeah. So to qualify, critics had to have written 2 extremely negative reviews of Boll. No issue there. There's a bunch of them out there in print or on the web, so it can't have just been someone on Twitter going, this film's absolute shit. In 2005, footage from the fights were to be included on the DVD of the upcoming Postal film. So that's a DVD extra, is him beating the shit out of some critics.
Did it happen?
It happened. This is amazing.
Now I gotta go get
the footage is out there on YouTube. You can find, if you type in Uwe Boll boxing, and actually, first of all, I want to point out he's one of those directors where you're like, oh yeah, you wouldn't fuck with him, and it's kind of unfair. Anyway, on June the 20th, 2006, Rich Lotax Kayanka stated on Something Awful that he'd been invited by Boll to be the first contestant, and after Kayanka reviewed Alone in the Dark, the online gambling site goldenpalace.com decided to sponsor the event. This is pre-influencer boxing days, and this shit is happening. So
the tracks though. Golden Palace. Remember when they were paying people to just write that on themselves all the time?
Yeah, that was so funny. I'd have done that. I'd have put that on my fucking forehead for a few grand. So they dubbed the event Raging Boll, which is
Brilliant.
whoa, mwah, that's just chef's kiss right there. A play on the Raging Bull, Martin Scorsese film. A lot was drawn up in late August 2006, featuring Kayanka Rui Morg, magazine writer. Rue Morg, magazine writer Christopher Alexander, webmaster of Cine Sutre, Carlos Palencia Villanes Aguilero, Ain't It Cool news writer Jeff Snyder, and Chance Minter, amateur boxer and website critic. might have been a mistake. Boll fought and won against all 5 competitors. Yeah, not in one night, but over a series of events at various boxing things. The first match took place on the 5th of September 2006 in Estepona, Spain, against Carlos Palencia. The others battled on the 23rd of September 2006 at the Plaza of Nations in Vancouver, Canada. After Kayanka lost his match, he would go on to make several allegations against Boll, including a claim that Boll refused to fight against Chance Minter, who was an experienced amateur boxer. However, Boll fought Minter as his 4th opponent, so his 3rd on one night, actually. So he already fought 2 other guys before this amateur boxer, and he still won. This Kayanka also alleged that Boll had misled them by claiming that it was a PR stunt when he actually intended to fight them, and that Boll stated that the participants would get training before the match, which none of them did. Listen, look, if someone sets up a fight with you and they say, don't worry, I'll take it easy on you, they're almost certainly going to shoot on you and try and hurt you. Mm-hmm. So you have to go into that situation prepared. If you go into it with your guard down, they're going to hurt you. And actually, this goes back to one person that I was thinking of covering in the not too distant future. Have you ever heard of Charlie Zelenoff?
I have not.
Charlie Z is a notorious... I mean, he's probably mentally ill. It's almost confirmed at this point that he has significant issues. He would film himself going into gyms and saying, oh, do you want to spar with me? Just like random gyms, like your fucking local gym around the corner. And just like, do you want to spar with me? There's no boxing equipment in the gym. It's just like a fitness place. Okay. And he'd give the other person gloves. And he's like, yeah, just like sparring and stuff. And then he'd just like start throwing haymakers at these like poor guys who didn't know what to expect. And when they started fighting back, he'd run off and get arrested for assault and stuff. He took it one stage further. He stalked Kim Kardashian to the point where he was like given a restraining order and arrested a bunch of times. And he was stupid enough to challenge Floyd Mayweather Sr. to a boxing match, the father of Floyd Mayweather, who beat the shit out of him, because even though he's a 60-year-old man, he's Floyd Mayweather Sr. And then he took it to the ultimate stage where he made disparaging remarks against Tyrone. Who was the guy who had three matches with Tyson Fury? Deontay Wilder.
Oh,
yeah, one of the most powerful punchers in the history of boxing. So he went to Deontay Wilder's gym, and you can view this on YouTube. He gets the absolute shit beaten out of him because Deontay Wilder outweighs him by like 100 pounds, and he's like half a foot taller than him. And he basically knocks him down. The thing with Charlie Zelenoff is that he will claim that he's undefeated. 160 professional fights undefeated, even though it's just him starting fights with people in gyms. He claims that he beat Deontay Wilder, even though we can all see that video, and he runs out of the gym scared for his life. And in the one professional fight he's had, he's lost because he quit halfway through. It reminds me a little bit of this situation here. If someone comes up to you and says they're going to fight you, but actually they're going to take it easy, it's a publicity stunt, blah, blah, blah. Don't buy that. Make sure that you have your guard up, and that if they are going to start fighting dirty, fight dirty back, hurt them, and then get away, basically. Hurt them and then get away. So Kayanka added in a post-match interview that half of us, the contenders, hadn't even seen his movies, which, okay.
How did you review movies you haven't seen?
Exactly. I don't know what's going on there. I think it's
Mhm.
probably just him saying that. Snyder shared similar sentiments, stating that I think he's a jerk. This might be a PR thing, but I don't want to keep getting punched in the head. Yeah.
Okay.
Boll had denied these claims in an interview, stating that he gave his opponents 3 months to prepare, which, I mean, that's a fair amount of time. So possibly. Other contestants responded less negatively. Alexander, in a Toronto Star article, recounts being invited, to Boll's beach house on the following day, where Boll asked him about the reasons for his negative review. Alexander bluntly told Boll that his movies were bloated, expensive, and incoherent attempts at aping American genre pictures, sporting some of the most boneheaded casting choices in filmdom.
Ouch.
To his face, yeah.
And then he punched him in his
No,
face.
he actually was like, all right, okay. And then they spent the day together. He also stated that Boll, after taking that, let him hang around. And he said, Boll was an insane, two-fisted rogue and a shockingly honest one at that. Somebody who absolutely adores film, knows its history, and truly lives for what he does. So he's a passionate guy.
Okay.
He's just terrible at what he does. So, yeah, it's one of those things where you love something so much that you want to be involved in it. And I love wrestling so much. And I got to do commentary at one event, and that was it. And I was happy. Bug took me. I wrote for a bunch of wrestling magazines. I'm done. I would never think, like, I'm going to step in a wrestling ring. I'm a 43-year-old man with an autoimmune disease. That would be a disastrous decision for me. So I feel like Uwe Boll is that guy who loves something so much, and even though he's not very good at it, he's gonna give it his all. And not all of us can say we can do that. So, anyway, post-fight, Boll praised the contestants in a press conference, stating, I now like the critics. Everybody who was in the ring showed guts and nobody dived, which, I mean, they didn't need to. You were punching them in the face. In April 2008, The Guardian ran an article claiming Boll had promised to retire if an online petition at petitiononline.com asked him to do so, and received 1 million signatures. A petition was later started on the site in response, with 1 million signatures of the goal. Unfortunately, it didn't get anywhere near that. So, yeah. So let's get to the positive redemption arc now. And it is positive. It's actually really cool. So he did retire from filmmaking because he couldn't take it anymore. No one was making that. He couldn't get the art grants anymore. No one was willing to fund his like disastrous films that were losing money. And he retired from filmmaking. But he'd already made quite a lot of money for himself at this point. You know, he's a very well-off man because he's obviously paid over for like 25 years to make films. So Boll entered into the restaurant industry. His desire to become a restaurateur came from his love of fine dining. He claims to have visited 120 Michelin-starred films within a span of 10 years. It's doable, one a month.
Okay.
For 10 years, that's possible for sure. I mean, I've been to a Michelin star restaurant. Yeah. Not all of them are actually that expensive. Michelin stars just generally are awarded to people that make great food. And I've been to a Michelin star restaurant and it wasn't that expensive at all. It was like $20 for a main course. That was it. So it was just really high quality food. And I've paid like 10 times that for food sometimes in restaurants that were very fancy and you didn't get anywhere near the quality. So it's not always about the price. It's sometimes just about the high quality. Anyway, he has made a short video series of restaurant reviews that have actually been really well received. So people understand that he knows what he's talking about when it comes to food. In 2015, Boll opened the Bauhaus restaurant in Vancouver after noting a significant lack of German cuisine in the city. He hired Stefan Hartmann as executive chef, who earned a Michelin star for his own Hartmann's restaurant in Berlin. Bauhaus has received positive reviews from local and international food critics. The restaurant ranked 37th on the 2016 list of Canada's 100 best restaurants. It's also listed in the world's 50th best restaurant discovery series in 2017, being one of only 3 Canadian restaurants to be included. Boll has remarked, about his newfound success in owning a restaurant. It's interesting, right? I had to open up a restaurant to get good reviews.
There
That's
you go.
funny. That's the
Yeah.
funniest thing he's said his entire life, because he understands the journey now. He's been through it all, and he's like, I found something I'm really good at. Also, he loves this. And again, this is a man who, while he doesn't make good films, is very good, very intelligent, and can turn his hand to a bunch of different things. And I would love to go and try, because German food's kind of interesting. It can be a bit stodgy if it's not cooked really well, but actually sometimes it can be really tasty and hearty comfort food. So I'd give that a shot. If I was ever in Vancouver, I'd go for, a Bauhaus meal. It sounds pretty cool. So that's Uwe Boll, arguably the worst director of all time, certainly one of the least successful, and a really interesting character who invited his critics to boxing matches and then beat the shit out of them. So
yeah, that's super interesting.
that's really interesting guy. I've had him at the back of my mind for a while, but he's not the kind of person that many people know about. But he is kind of an interesting person. So,
Yeah, he lost a lot of money.
Lots of money. Like, I wonder, and there is a documentary out there that you can see. I don't know where it is, but it's an investigation into Uwe Boll's career and how he kept getting the money he was getting, and he was never like 100% upfront about it, and he'd always be like, there'd be excuses about like where the funding was coming from and stuff. So who really knows? But the allegations of like him taking public money and making a big loss on it, I get it that there are art grants out there, but that money could have gone to other stuff, really,
Yeah. I don't even know how to score this one, just because like he just made bad movies.
He did.
No.
He did.
And I mean, I can't even comment that he made bad movies because I don't know that I've seen any of them. Like, I mean, he made movies that didn't make money, that cost a lot of money, and possibly laundered money, maybe. And I mean, at least he spread it around.
True. And also, and again, this is something we should always point out with the film industry. Whenever you make a film, a large scale film, you are providing work for people. So even if it's not some sort of Oscar worthy film, there is like 150, 200, maybe 300 people that will be involved in the process of making this film. Those people will have been able to pay their bills for like 6 months or whatever it is. And, good on him for that, because, if you are making as many films as this guy did, then there's a lot of people that have had good lives as a result of that to a certain extent.
Yeah. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to score it as a 15, because he could have done better, because he's smart and he just didn't want to take criticism.
Yeah, I feel like the big negative here is the fact that the thing is, a part of me thinks, he couldn't take criticism, and he couldn't take, deserved criticism. But a part of me wonders if him not taking criticism and railing against people and arguing with them and making people hate him so much was an attempt at getting an audience to just follow every film he made. And he's guaranteed this audience because they hate him and they just want to see how bad his films are. So
that's pretty smart too.
That would be a very smart move. I feel like the smarter move would just be to make good films.
Harder to do.
Harder to do. That's very true. And he did make some decent films. So if you get the opportunity to watch an Uwe Boll film, I would say do it, but don't go in with any expectations of quality or the idea that you're going to enjoy it because it's so terrible it's funny. Like, they might just be awful and boring. So
okay,
yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah, so that's Uwe Boll, 15. Really interesting character. I feel like we don't get as many interesting people like that in the film industry anymore, because a lot of people kind of get shifted around from project to project, and it's less of an auteur-driven industry now. There's no longer like people like a new Spielberg coming out every 5-10 years or whatever it is. I think the last one would really be like probably Chris Nolan, probably the last auteur in the film industry, someone who can like demand a specific type of film and it will get made. So he's like, I want to make a film about the guy who created the nuclear bomb. Like, oh, Chris, we're never going to make any money off that. That's never going to win any Oscars. There aren't many filmmakers like that anymore. The film industry needs more weirdos. That's true, Haley. It really does. I mean, the problem is as well, I think the modern film industry has also diluted a lot of the weirdos. You look at what Tim Burton was doing at the start of his career with Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands and the first Batman film and all those cool little films. Like, those are really specific genre interesting films. And then after fucking Planet of the Apes, you just get this like slide. I mean, they're not all bad. Big Fish is good, but there's a lot of terrible Tim Burton films now. So I feel like he's no longer the outsider. So we need more outsiders, more weirdos.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need more interesting stories and less remakes and just
less sequels.
Rich people, start giving your money away to weirdos.
I really do think, and actually the thing, and Hollywood's got itself in this position
for art.
Yeah, for art. For art's sake. Like, it's in the MGM logo. But I also think that Hollywood's got itself into this position partially because of, the lockdown didn't help, the global pandemic. People have just not returned to the things they were doing before. But also Hollywood's approach of taking slightly interesting filmmakers and making them fit very rigid ways of making films, because it's the Marvel way and that's going to make movies. It's the Star Wars way and that's going to make money. And this is that way of doing things. It's no longer making money. You're no longer making big budget films. And this reminds me of the early 60s when the studios had been churning out the same kind of films for years and years and years and years and years. And then Dr. Dolittle came out, the 1960s version. And that nearly collapsed the studio. It was that much of a financial failure. And it had all the things in it that should have made it a success. It was a musical. It was funny. It was interesting. It had a big name star attached to it. I can't remember the guy's name. He was a British actor at the time. But it failed completely. And then a couple of years later, Easy Rider came along. And then a few years after that, you had Bonnie and Clyde. And you had these cheap, independent films that were quite violent, very individual, and the film industry changed forever, because all of a sudden all of these like renegade filmmakers were getting opportunities. The Scorseses, the Coppolas, these big name people were getting the opportunity to make interesting films, and they all became huge hits. And then it became The Machine, and The Machine got really boring again. And it got very vanilla, and then you get the Marvels and you get the Flash, and they don't make any money. So now is the time for Hollywood to go, instead of pumping 360, 200 million or whatever it is dollars into a film that's going to lose us the same amount of money, why don't we just give $20 million to this weirdo? And maybe he makes $100 million film. Blumhouse, for all its faults, is one of the most successful studios because they'll just give someone $15-20 million to make an Annabelle film or an Invisible Man film or a Megan film. And those things will make $150 million easy.
Yeah.
So do that. Give the Kevin Smiths of this world money to make the Chasing Amy's of these types of things. Give people who have got interesting ideas, just give them $20 million. That's all they need. Give them the support they need from the people that they need around them. Release it to a general audience, and you'll make profit. And then maybe have one tentpole film a year.
Yeah.
One film with $100 million budget.
An industry and business behind it that like made it sustain itself before everything got all like focused on what's that quick profit.
Oh yeah, short-term turnover, basically. Like, there is Blade Runner is a weird example of this, because Blade Runner is a beautiful, amazing film, but it was a flop at the box office. But it went on to have this incredible cult-like following and eventually made profit through re-releases, director's cuts, definitive cuts, and then eventually got a sequel. And I think one of the great examples as well is The Shawshank Redemption, which was a disaster at the box office. It made no money, but that film is now widely regarded as one of the best films made in the last 50 years.
It's a great movie.
It is a great movie, and it has now made lots more money as a result because people keep putting it on TV and putting it on streaming services and watching it again and again and again. So the rule here is, if you make a loss, okay, that's fine. But if instead of making a $300 million loss on a fucking Flash film with Ezra Miller in it, why don't you just like give someone $20 million? Okay, maybe you only get $10-15 million back. Maybe it's a hit and you get $75 million profit back out of it. But the loss is fine, and it'll get legs in a second life, because you don't have to spend double the budget on advertising and marketing anymore, because Netflix will, swallow that up and they'll do the marketing for you. So give it to them, or Amazon, or someone like that. Just sell the rights to them after you're done with your release. Give them the exclusive rights. They'll handle the marketing for you, and you'll make a bit of money on the back end. It's really not hard. This is basic business, people. Anyway, give us a film. We'll make you a good film. So, yeah, I'm happy for Uwe Boll getting a 15, because he made bad films, but it's art. It's out there. People got something out of it. I have no problems with Uwe Boll's films because they're not exploitation. I actually have more problems with something like The Shining, which had like significant long-term impact on Shelley Duvall's mental health. I mean, she has basically been ruined by that film because Kubrick made her do like 100 takes of each thing. Like, the scene where she's backing up with the baseball bat up the stairs and Jack's going, "Give me the bat, give me the bat." They had to film that over a month, continuously, non-stop. She was so dehydrated from crying that she stopped being able to produce tears. So, and being in that situation for a full year, isolated on a snowy mountain, it broke her psychologically, and she's never recovered from making The Shining.
That would suck.
Yeah, it would suck. So I have no problem with Uwe Boll's films. I just thought it was interesting because the reviews are harsh. He was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to fight them.
That's awesome. Like that, it was definitely an interesting story. Bad films, not a bad guy.
So, not necessarily a bad guy, just someone who made terrible films. It happens to the best of us, including Colin Trevorrow, who isn't the best of us. But so the other thing, so normally now we would do a second story, and normally it would be my turn and Derek would have gone first or something. But the other part we wanted to discuss is we've had an interesting reaction to our last episode, which was the Henry Ford episode and the Richard II episode, which was season 4, episode 11. It's done reasonably well. It's done really well on the podcasting thing, which is what I anticipated. It's done really, really well on YouTube by our standards, anyway. And I produced a couple of reels for it, mostly focusing on Richard II, because we said some interesting things and they've had good traction. The one thing we wanted to talk about, and we have a bunch of new subscribers now, which is kind of cool, but we got a bunch of really interesting comments, and the video itself has been downvoted significantly because mostly from, almost entirely from non-subscribers who have found the film and seem upset about the fact that we have pointed out, and this isn't a take. Someone said, "This is a bad take, guys. This isn't a take. Henry Ford is mentioned in Mein Kampf. Mm-hmm. Hitler was a huge fan of Henry Ford. He was a racist. He was an anti-Semite. He used his platform to spread anti-Semitism, and he basically exploited people. This isn't a take. That happened. All of it."
Yes.
So we just wanted to address some of the comments that are quite funny.
Yeah. I loved when they were calling me names and stuff like that. It bummed me out when they said nobody was listening, because you guys are all clearly listening.
Yeah, we've had like 75,000 downloads, and I know that's not a huge number because Joe Rogan does that every fucking day. Yeah, good for him. But we're just a rinky-dink little operation, and we've done well. We're in the top 25% podcasts in the world, so I'm happy with that.
Which is not bad for two dudes that just don't do any marketing for it at all. So thank you guys for finding us.
Like, we both have full-time gigs and side gigs, and we're both married. We both have lives. I wish I could have a team of people that marketed the podcast, but generally it's just us trying to occasionally post stuff on Instagram. And I made a couple of reels recently, and they did really well. They were very funny, and I feel like I edited them well, and I'm very pleased with how they performed. But we are just two people who have consistently put out a podcast. And yes, I work in the podcasting industry as a professional, and I've launched like 200 podcasts that have done really well for multinational businesses. But we are just two guys. We aren't world famous. We don't have a massive social media following. Between us, we probably have like 2,000 followers on social media, if that. So that's the fact that we've managed to get 75,000 downloads at this point, and like nearly 1,500 followers, subscribers on various platforms. I think that says that we're a success. The one guy who was like, this is a bad take, and also Henry Ford did amazing things with his life. What have you guys done? Listen, we're not saying that Henry Ford didn't do amazing things. He changed the world, literally. And we do not have a problem with that. I mean, the pollution's not great, and some of the road system layouts, that shit should change. The way, suburbs are built, that could probably be better. But we're not denying that Henry Ford is one of the most important people of the last 500 years, probably.
Right. Also, though, in July of 1938, the German consul in Cleveland gave Ford on his 75th birthday the Grand Cross of the German Eagle, the highest medal from the Nazi government in Germany at the time.
And I'm sure he accepted it because he liked that.
He did.
So we aren't suggesting that Henry Ford wasn't an important figure and it hasn't done, elements of good in the work that he's done. The Ford industry, the Ford Motor Company has employed a lot of people. They've innovated in incredible ways. Some of their cars are brilliant, really iconic vehicles. And he has helped create an entire industry and world really built around this. And without him, we wouldn't have the Mad Max films. But, you can't, if you're going to come in here and criticize us for pointing out the fact that Henry Ford definitely was anti-Semitic and definitely was adored by Hitler, then you're the fucking problem, not us. We didn't do anything wrong. We didn't state anything incorrect. It's all out there for public consumption.
Right. I talked about the good things he did. I clowned a little bit about that he failed and went bankrupt on his first couple of businesses and then just got some more money. But that's how business works, and that's how successful business people work, is you fail and you try again and you go get new funding.
Yeah. Sometimes you overstate how successful you are and you get into trouble for that as well.
Oops.
But people go bankrupt. I've spent a lot of money on various things in my life, not always worked out. But, I've been successful enough in the business world to own a house with a tiny, tiny mortgage that has set me up for the rest of my life. I'm very lucky to have done that. So people have pointed out that we aren't as successful as Henry Ford. No, very few people are as successful as Henry Ford. Thomas Edison wasn't as successful as Henry Ford, and he's one of the most famous people in history. So no, these two schmoes here are not as successful as Henry Ford. However, we've never bought into the protocols of the Elders of Zion because we're not fucking stupid. So if that's your problem, maybe stop being such a fascist.
Ooh. The other thing is that the whole show, if you listen to it and follow us more than just the first couple of minutes of reading the thumbnail.
Yeah, if you actually listen to the fucking episodes.
Everybody's idiots. We're all idiots. We all make mistakes. That's the whole point, is we're talking about people and the mistakes they made so that maybe we don't do dumb stuff that let's see here. There was a person that ran the Hitler Youth in Vienna that said it was Henry Ford's writing that influenced him so greatly and his comrades. Maybe that was a mistake.
Maybe Henry Ford should probably regret that, but actually at that point in his life, he was wholly into that way of thinking.
So that's the thing, is like, maybe he wasn't a bad guy totally. A lot of people were crappy and thinking that way then, They were locking up Japanese people in internment camps around
Exactly.
shortly after that.
Yeah, and the great example is the Jesse Owens thing when he went to the Berlin Olympics and the American team were like, "Oh my God, Hitler wouldn't give him his gold medal. That's terrible. How dare they treat him like that?" Right, Jesse, go and pick up our bags and bring them onto the bus, please. So we understand there is hypocrisy all around, and we are here specifically to analyze people's mistakes and give you lessons that you can take away from them. And we aren't saying we aren't idiots ourselves. Me and Derek have both made mistakes in our lives that we have learned from, and we understand that people are flawed human beings. But the important difference is you take those mistakes, you do the best you can to improve yourself, improve your life, and maybe help others if you can without, getting in their way. And that's really kind of the whole point of what we're doing here. We aren't just doing this entirely for a laugh. Yes, we're trying to do it to entertain people.
Yes.
But sometimes you might learn something from some of the stuff. I mean, I do every single episode. So the thing is, we're saying this, the people who commented and had a go and downvoted the video, first of all, we don't give a shit because you've hate watched our video. So thank you for the views.
And you never got to this part of this video.
You definitely haven't got to this part of the video. And also, we don't give a shit if you don't like what we're saying about a guy who definitely was loved by the Nazis. So if it's also, do you guys do you not understand that it's kind of weird that you're coming out in support of a guy who was kind of a fascist? Do you not see that as a little bit suspicious? So,
I mean, but he hated communists and they were bad, godless people.
Yeah, he hated trade unions, but by golly, he liked the Nazis. So yeah, we just wanted to address this. It's been on our minds. We've kind of been laughing about it because Derek, we got called cuck soy boys.
Yes, that's my first time I've ever been called a soy boy cuck, and I was like,
that's so funny. Also, isn't that from 8 years ago? It was worth mentioning because it definitely hasn't. At no point has it made me angry. It's definitely made me laugh a bunch of times, but I think the problem is that the majority of the people that have been downvoting and commenting have I don't think you understand how much wasted energy that is. And also, I've been deleting negative comments on our videos. Yeah, it's my fucking channel. It's our fucking channel. We will delete what we want. Who gives a shit what you think? So thank you to the people who have been really supportive and who have helped us. And also to the people who have pointed out when we've made mistakes, because that has happened. Yes. And thank you for doing that because we need correcting. However, we are not incorrect about Henry Ford. He was a piece of shit. He was a very successful piece of shit, but that man towards the end of his life was an awful human being. And unfortunately, he didn't have a moment where he was like, maybe I was wrong. He didn't have a moment of clarity like some of the people we talk about where he's like, I fucked up my life and I wish I hadn't. He went to his grave holding on to hateful beliefs and views. And that's not a good way to live life. And the lesson is there. Don't buy into doctrine and just hang on to it because it can be really poisonous to you and damage your life. Not everyone has the money of Henry Ford where they can always be surrounded by friends and well-wishers. Some people get hateful and they lose everything. So that's what we're pointing out here. And thank you for the views and the attention. We've had a really interesting 48 hours. Had 3,500 views in 48 hours. It's been fun.
Yeah.
But just wanted to address it. And thank you all for sticking by us. And if you're sticking up for fascists, then you're probably in the wrong place. Joe Rogan's got a really lovely podcast. He'd probably love you over there. So you can go and follow that.
Yeah, I just had to clarify that I'm not here to bag on people. No. And I appreciate being corrected when I'm wrong, when my facts are wrong. It's all about correction and growth.
Exactly.
So, but nobody pointed out anything wrong. They just said I suck.
Yeah, they called us communists. Okay, do you understand what communism is? We aren't communists. I'm a consumer. I'm not given anything for free except most of my health care because we have the NHS, thank God, which is down to a Welshman. Also we had one person say that the massacring of the Irish people 800 years ago is nothing. It's not funny. And I agree, it's not funny. I was pointing out the terrible hypocrisy of the fact that the English had and have been going over to Ireland and mistreating the Irish people for nearly an entire millennia. I was pointing that out, and then when I pointed out, as a Welsh person, I've experienced repression myself. My whole language and culture was repressed for a long, long time. And then the response was, haha, you're Welsh, blur. And it's like, okay, so you're just here to rag on us. That's funny.
Yeah, troll.
Trolls. So yeah, I've enjoyed some of the stupid interactions and the fact that it has absolutely no bearing on us and has actually made me feel better about some of my decisions. I mean, we riled people up by mentioning that Henry Ford was a terrible person. So good. I hope they learned something.
Wait till you hear about that English director that I'm talking about next time.
Oh, I can't wait for that. Yeah, we've had some weird fucking directors over in this country. Also, if you think that Industrialist was bad, you wait until some of the people we're getting to. We haven't even gotten to the guy who's taken over Twitter. And I know he has a lot of fans out there who just want to fucking climb up right inside his asshole and just like, it's so warm and snuggly in here, Mr. Musk. Like, we are coming for that guy, and he is not a good person.
Somebody's going to show up at our house.
Oh, that's fine. Like, I'm just waiting for an excuse at this point. Like, I'm like, oh, finally. So much frustration built up in me. Yeah. That's fine. You guys do you, but
internet.
You're funny. We just wanted to talk about that. But yeah, that's our show for this week. Thank you guys for dropping by. Haley, really cool to see you. Thank you for dropping by. Toasterzoid, it's really cool to see you. Thank you to our wonderful patrons, Jesse, Chris, Andrew, Zavara, Dilly Bob, and Kimberly Johnson. Thank you all so much. We'll be sending out presents very soon. Also, you'll be getting your Patreon exclusive recording soon. We tried to record one yesterday. My God, did we have technical problems with that?
Oops.
Yeah, my video and audio was awful. And I was like, oh, fuck, we just wasted hours making this stuff. So you will get a bunch of stuff soon, I promise. And if you would like to join our Patreon, where you can possibly pay to hate us, go to patreon.com/history's greatest idiots, where you will see behind the scenes footage from our life, exclusive recordings for paid Patreon members only, scripts from the actual episodes. You'll get free gifts when you join, and also every year, and also a bunch of other cool stuff that's on the horizon when we get a chance to get around to it, because we both have full-time jobs. Thank you all so much. Just found you all today, already a fan. Haley, you've made my day by saying that. That's fucking wonderful. Thank you so much. Feel free to subscribe to us. And also, if you want to follow us on Instagram, go to instagram.com/history's greatest idiots, or just at history's greatest idiots, whatever's easiest. We're on there. We're not on Twitter anymore because fuck that shit. So also you can find us on YouTube and at history's greatest idiots. We're on there. All of our videos are live, and you can actually watch our podcasts live in video form on Spotify now. So go and subscribe to us on there and join the 1,250 other Spotify followers that apparently make us a failure, because that's not a big enough number for some people.
It's too small.
It's not enough. It's only 4 figures. So yeah, go and follow us on there. I love doing the show. It wouldn't change it for the world. We're coming up to we're not far from 100 episodes now. We're like 12 episodes away, 13 episodes away from
I don't know. I'd have to take my shoes off and your shoes off, and
have to do a bunch of counting. But also coming up in not too distant future, we're going to have a special guest. My friend Peter is someone I worked with in the past in the wrestling industry. He is also a real expert in the world of cycling. He has his own cycling podcast. So I can't wait to feature him on the podcast. He's going to talk about a very famous cyclist who was very heavily involved in blood doping. And Peter is a really interesting guy. He has a bunch of contacts in the cycling industry, including someone who was breaking the news live about the Lance Armstrong thing. So he's really super connected to this industry, and I can't wait to get his insights, because cycling is the dirtiest of dirty sports when it comes to cheating.
That's going to be fun.
they're all on EPO. It's fucking amazing. So yeah, thank you guys so much. And until next time, Derek, would you like to say goodbye, please?
Goodbye, everybody.
And we'll see you all again soon. And remember, if you see a fascist, just move on. There are better things in life than supporting fascists and stuff like that. Anyway, take care now. Bye.